So, good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending on the place that you are listening us today. We want to thank you all for being here at this present moment for our tea talk today. Please, we would like you to add your questions in the platform or comments. You have a little spot there for making the comments. My name is Liliana Domingues, founder and managing director of Amarnavida, and I'm going to be the moderator of this tea talk. Today with me, I'm the pleasure to have Bob Lockwood, and is going to talk about regenerative living in the 21st century. So, who is Bob? We're going to start from there. Bob is formerly a partner with the Gallup Pool, leading the U.S. higher education consulting practice. During his stage in Gallup, Bo spoke to corporations, big ones, and a lot of government institutions. Bob also has a master's degree in authentic leadership from the University of Nebraska, since Bob is from U.S., and his bachelor's degree in finances from Penn State University. So he's a transformational speaker, and he teaches people easy to understand ways to heal, transform, and create a new way of life. His goal is to inspire people to take a journey to personal freedom, creating a new way of life in the 21st century. As a visionary author, Bo co-authored 2 books, Regenerating America and Essence. And Bo is currently working on this 3rd book, How to Build a Thriving Company in the New Paradigm Business World. So, Bo, once again, thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
You have quite impressive, thank you. You have such a quite impressive journey, since from big corporations consultant to now being a transformational speaker and teacher. So I want to start asking you, what made you go along to this path? What made you take this path ahead? So please tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, I have had a very interesting life, and I suspect that it will continue. So I've been very blessed. Yet at the same time, I've had a very arduous, difficult journey. And at one point, I literally was experiencing hell on earth. And but just to step back from that, what led up to that, I grew up in a very middle-class neighborhood and went to a great school and had great friends. But I was a stutterer, and I stuttered profusely all the way through till I was about 45 years old. And I went to speech therapy, and so growing up a stutter is tough because there were so many times in class, for example, that I knew the answer, and I would go to raise my hand, and you can actually feel stuttering happening. It happens before you actually even. So I would just lower my hand because I wouldn't want to embarrass myself trying to say the answer and continue to stutter. So as a result, I grew up getting ridiculed, and people thought I was stupid, and there's just a lot of judgment that happens, and people feel sorry for you, and then they actually finish the sentence for you. I mean, there's just a lot of things, and they think they're helping you, but it's somewhat offensive. So it's this whole dynamic that just made growing up a bit challenging. And so it led me to a place where at 45, I ended up going through just a very dark divorce, and it just put me into a wormhole that, like I said, I experienced hell on earth, and it was just a very dark time. And one discovery that I made in my seeking is that my stuttering was not caused by a medical condition. I was always treated. I was put on Ritalin, and I was, all these different things and therapy, but it was all based on treating it as a medical condition. And what I discovered was that it was not, for me, it is not a medical condition. It's an emotional one.
Mm-hmm.
And when through my seeking and through learning how to heal myself, I was able to heal the emotion that was creating the stuttering. And I mean, I still stutter from time to time, but not nearly what it used to be. But at the same time, by treating it and healing the emotion, I just naturally stopped stuttering. So that is something that I do want to speak about, as far as helping people that do stutter to perhaps treat it in another way, and treat it as what it is, and that it, or perhaps, like for me it was that. I can't say it for everyone that it's an emotional issue, but for me it was an emotional one. So that was, I was really the combination between the divorce and really coming to grips with my stuttering, and understanding that the emotion was really driven about being scared to speak my truth. So that was a big thing growing up. I grew up in a pretty strict, pretty strict household, and I have two older brothers. So they were always trying to beat me up, and it's just kind of like, and I stuttered, and it was just a tough time. But at the same time, I was very blessed, and I have a great family. We all love each other, and everything's good. But still, it was challenging. So so through my seeking, as I mentioned, I was able to heal myself, and I think that's a big thing that people can really learn to do. Is we can all take responsibility for our own healing. And what I've learned, I mean, even like physical pains in our body, there's an emotion that there's something beneath it that's creating that pain. So it's like, I've learned to, anytime I have an ailment, I look into, why does my neck hurt? Why am I having lower back pain? And when I look into it, there's actually Louise Hay. She's since passed, but she did a great book called Heal Your Body. And it's really understanding the origin of pain and resolving the emotion that's driving it. And then all of a sudden the pain goes away. So I really learned to live my life this way, and I definitely am in a much better place than what I was. So I just like to share with people what I do, and not that I have any attachment, whether they do anything with the information or not, but at the same time, I feel compelled to share people what I've learned, so perhaps they can take some things on that may help them as well.
Wow. So you became very passionate about this big term, which is regenerative and regenerative living. So actually, what brings to us today is this regenerative living in the 21st century. So what really this means to you, and why you wanted to bring this theme to the plate?
Well, it's interesting. I learned about regenerative back in like 2010, 2011. I actually was part of an organization that I founded, which was called Princeton Green, and we were an outsourced sales force for green technology companies. And that's really when I began to learn about the whole regenerative space, as far as regenerative design and just this whole concept of being able to regenerate ourselves. And this was at a time when I was very much into my seeking and doing a lot of my own personal healing. So I was personally regenerating myself. And it's just like, if we could do this, if everyone can be regenerating themselves, then communities would regenerate. And then when a community regenerates, then a country regenerates, then the world. So it's like, we all have the ability to do this. It really just begins with the awareness. Like, if we don't know, like we don't know what we don't know. So having the awareness is a great thing, because then we have a choice. So this whole regenerative space, when people learn about it and learn that we can actually live in a way where our communities just continue to self-perpetuate themselves, as far as regenerating and living in harmony with nature, and using infinite sources of power, such as the sun, to really help us wean our dependence on finite energy sources. I mean, we have a very impatient world, and one of the great things about this pandemic is that it slowed our world down a lot, and it's been a true blessing for so many reasons. But as far as regenerative, I just think this is the time to really introduce this whole platform of regenerative to the world, and help us transition and transcend to a new way of living that is fitting and appropriate for the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
So if you'd like, we can start with better understanding what regenerative means.
Yes,
okay.
That would be great for people to understand
Sure.
what really means.
Sure. Well, sometimes it's easier to explain what something's not than what it actually is. So in other words, finding solutions and opposites. And that's a big thing that I do, is I like to look at whatever situation that I'm seeing and trying to figure something out. I'll look at it the complete opposite way, because a lot of times we discover that the solutions are in opposites. And there's a lot of things that we actually believe that are the opposite of what's actually true. So I think I mentioned to you, like, there's a model that I use to demonstrate the best way to hide the truth.
Yeah.
Like, if this is the truth, you make the lie 180 degrees the opposite, so it actually blocks the truth. But what's happening now in the Great Awakening, when people begin to seek and discover things about themselves, they become more aware, and then that expands their perspective. And when their perspective expands, what happens is there's like, you start to see things from a different angle, and then all of a sudden the truth begins to reveal itself. And then all of a sudden people are like, "Oh my gosh, I've been living a lie. I've been living in an illusionary world." And that's really what we're here to discuss today, is that there's actually at least two different worlds happening on this earth right now. There's the world that the mass population lives in, and then there's the world that there are people such as ourselves that are seeking, and we're learning, and we're creating a new way of life and discovering how to remain calm amongst the chaos. That's it. There's a new world that's evolving that is really about people coming together to collectively bring about a community that we're experiencing more love and more joy and more freedom and more abundance and more peace in our lives. So to just drill into what regenerative means, it's probably best to start with what it doesn't mean.
Yeah.
So let's kind of look at what degenerate means. Degenerate as a noun is actually an immoral or corrupt person. So this is according to the dictionary. Degenerate is an immoral or corrupt person. And as a verb, it means that it's a state of decline or deterioration, physically, mentally, or morally. So these definitions describe degenerative living: corrupt, decline, deteriorating, and immoral. That's, to me, it feels like that's happening so much in our world right now. So we're actually living in a degenerative world.
Yeah. Majority,
Yes. So if we compare this to regenerate, which is the opposite, according to the dictionary, regenerate, defined as a verb, is about bringing about renewed existence, to generate again. And defined as an adjective, it means that it is one who is reformed or reborn, especially in a spiritual or moral sense.
Yeah.
So right? I mean, it seems to make sense. So when you look at the definitions that describe regenerative living, you have renewed, reborn, spiritual, and moral.
So bringing that to the present time, the 21st century. So what could be the description of regenerative living for truth, at least?
I mean, one possible definition could be that regenerative living is a renewed existence that lives in harmony and balance with nature, reflected by the expansive consciousness that self-perpetuates this new 21st century way of life.
But so why the 21st century? Why is that? Why you bring this?
I think that's a very important distinction, because the reality is, from a time-wise standpoint, we are in the 21st century. But from a humanity evolutionary standpoint, we are still stuck in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
It's the old paradigm. The old paradigm, 20th century, is a set of beliefs that are based on illusions, and the great transition for humanity, our great challenge at this time, is to transition from the old paradigm story, the old narrative, to the new paradigm narrative, which is vastly different. And that's what we're going to discuss more today.
So actually, what you are saying, just to wrap it up a little bit, what you are saying is regenerative living implicates also our own ability to connect to higher consciousness and our true self. So implicates also our development of our, what people call spiritual being. It's also incorporating that, isn't
Yes.
it? Just to wrap it up.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great way to pull it all together.
Okay, that's great.
Yes. So
So
thank you.
you want
What's
to
that?
demonstrate to us something, isn't it?
Well, there's a few things that I can demonstrate. As far as perspective, I think this is a great time to really talk about perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Perspective is the way in which we view things,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone has our own perspective. So we tend to waste a lot of time trying to convince people that our perspective is right, because perspective is a matter of truth is a matter of perspective, meaning that the way that we see things is how we base our truth on them. Yet at the same time, we can be viewing the same thing and seeing it differently. So a great example of that is if you take your arm and point it up to the ceiling, and you point your finger at the ceiling and you start drawing a clockwise motion, and you keep that same motion that's going clockwise. You're looking up at it, it's going clockwise. You keep that motion going and you keep bringing it down. And when you bring it down to about your waist, when you look at it, you'll notice something.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice that it's no longer going clockwise, it's going counterclockwise.
Mm-hmm.
So the same motion of our arm is going clockwise when we're looking up, and it's going counterclockwise looking down. And that's why truth is a matter of perspective, because, or I don't know, are you looking up or are you looking down? Who knows? So that's why perspective is so important, because perspective really determines how we view the world and how we view ourselves in that world. So, for example, the perspective of the old paradigm is that we are finite human beings that live only once. So in that story, and this is how I was raised to believe, I was raised to believe that we only live once, so we might as well, we have to enjoy this place, and the only way that we're going to have eternal life is we repent and claim Jesus Christ as our Savior. That whole narrative, and it also means that if I died today, my one life would be 55 years old, right? So in the new paradigm, it's the opposite. It's truly the opposite, that we are not finite, that we are infinite spiritual beings having a finite human experience. So it goes from being finite to infinite. And yes, we do believe that we have one life, but it happens to be one infinite life. Our soul is infinite. And I'm not one that believes in past lives, but what I do believe in are past chapters of my one singular life.
That's very nice.
Yeah. And so when you hear the term old soul, to me, what that means is that that's a soul that has had many, many, many chapters.
It's a big book.
It's a big book. Exactly. It's a big book. And the reason we are here is to acquire wisdom. And we are here to experience things that we cannot experience in pure spirit form. We cannot experience birth because we're infinite. We can't experience. We experience human love in a different way than spiritual love. We experience human touch. We experience human connection. We experience challenges and strife. And through those challenges and strife, we learn about ourselves. And when we acquire that knowledge, that helps to expand our soul. So our true purpose for being here is to experience things that we cannot experience elsewhere. And we are here to learn and grow and have experiences that really challenge us. And unfortunately, the way that we're programmed is we only get really pushed to change when we get pushed to the edge, where it's like, you're like, really, it's time to check out. Like, and then all of a sudden, then that's when something can happen. We are very lazy, as meaning that when things are going well and everything's going great, we're just living life and, enjoying gluttony. And it's just, we're not growing and we're not challenging ourselves. And that's why so many times that challenges can be really difficult. Like we live in a very challenging place. And I used to like discard birthdays, but because I never really, I'm like, it's no big deal. It's another birthday. But the reality is, like, as I'm getting older, I'm realizing just how challenging it is to even survive on this earth. And it's like, it's an honor. It's like, and one thing that really kind of irks me in a way is that the older people, the way that our society has evolved is like older people are almost discarded. It's like, just put them in the retirement home, just let them go. And we're not gathering their wisdom. And that's a big thing. It's like, if we don't capture the wisdom of those people that are leaving the earthly plane, then that wisdom is gone. Yeah, totally. So, and when we stop passing wisdom down from generation to generation, that's when the civilization begins to die. So
you have like a path that is more degenerative, as you call it, and a path that is more regenerative. So it's what you have, basically, isn't it?
Yes. If it's okay, I'd like to share the screen now, so we can show what we're going over. And this may look a little daunting.
No, it's perfect.
There's a lot on it, but are you able to see it now? It's hard for me to tell.
If you can put it a little bit bigger.
Okay. Zoom.
Are people able to see? If you can put it in the comments, it's okay like that. Bo, it's just to illustrate. Yes.
Is this good or not? Because it's hard for me to tell.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. People are saying it. Yes.
All right, cool. So,
thank you, people.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. So what I would like to do is really walk people through this. Because this is it really describes what's taking place on the earth today. And there's a lot to be learned within this one graphic. So this is the only one that we're going over. So I would like to just like take our time and step through it. So if we start at the green section is just acknowledging that all through the 40s and the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, up until 2007, 2008.
Sorry, Bo, it's just one thing that's in front of, okay. You can put it a little bit, okay.
Okay, I see. So it's not sharing my graphic, it's sharing my screen.
So sharing, you put the sharing screen. No worries.
Okay, I got you. Okay, well, anyway, we'll just roll with it. So all through the 40s up until 2007, 2008, they were very prosperous times throughout the world. And we went from the industrial economy to the technology economy, information technology, and then we got to the new millennium. Then in 2007, 2008, the Great Recession happened, where the market crashed. And ever since then, in the United States, the Federal Reserve Board has been printing money. And when they just continue to print money and inject money into the market will naturally rise. So it's artificially propping up the stock market, particularly in the United States, because the stock market is doing well, and they're claiming it's because the economy is thriving. And there may be some truth to that, but the reality is that they've been pumping a lot of money into the market to keep it propped up. And at the same time, the world reserves have been supporting the global economy. So we've been struggling since 2008. It's been a time that a lot of people have been just living in fear and really taking on this mindset of scarcity. And then what happens is in January 2020, we have this pandemic that hits. And it's interesting because I really view the pandemic as just a wonderful blessing because so many positive things have happened as a result. The first thing I'll point out is that we have a very impatient world, and the world has slowed down. And in that slowdown process, I mean, here we are, we're all stuck in quarantine to various degrees. But the reality is there are a lot more people that are staying at home, and people are beginning to question what's going on in this world. And there's been a lot of information that's being shared, and it's kind of really challenging to know what's true and what's not true, and because there's just so much getting put out there that it's tough to know. So it's really put our world in a very a tricky state. So here we go, and we have this divine detour, which really separates. We actually experienced a fork in the path, where to the left is what's called the constrictive economy, the constrictive path, which is yielding a constrictive economy. And when you go up this path, this is the path that the mass world population is currently on. And when you look at the first step on the path, it says that constrictive consciousness continues, which is right here. Constrictive consciousness continues, and that means that people remain asleep. And the sleeping souls that are taking the constrictive path, they have a misguided belief that it leads back to the prosperous times of yesteryear. And that's an illusion. That's not true. But yet we continue to plow forward. And the trajectory that we're on is one that we're leading ourselves into a state of extinction.
Destruction.
Yeah, it's we have a constrictive economy. We are remaining separate and stuck in our self-imposed suffering, and it's self-imposed because we continue to believe in an illusion that, well, if we just keep moving forward, we're going to return to prosperity, and that's not so. We continue to remain the same as far as our purchasing decisions, which is really where I would like to have a conversation about what a regenerative economy is all about, because it's vastly different than the economy that we have now. And I think that right there is the point in which true change can happen. And if we keep going on this path, the earth is destroyed or depleted, and we are destroyed, and humanity dies. So that's the story of what's going on the constricted path.
So what is the regenerative path, and how to make that bridge that you have there?
Okay, well, if you look at it, it's basically the opposite. When you look at the expansive path, you compare it to that of the constrictive path. So on the expansive path, expansive consciousness awakens, which means that we begin to realize that we are not finite human beings that are in a hopeless situation. We're actually infinite spiritual beings who can collectively come together and become our true power. And collectively, we have the strength and ability to create any conditions that we want to experience while on this earthly plane. And that's really where this whole notion of creating a regenerative lifestyle is really what it's all about. So you look at the expansive path, the consciousness awakens, we connect as one, we live our truth as spiritual beings having a human experience, and we break free from what is known as the human condition. The human condition is a set of beliefs that we are somehow not worthy, we're not good enough, and what it does, it brings about this survival of the fittest. So we currently live in this very competitive environment where people are out to take and get what they want. But when you compare that to what's happening on the expansive path, it's just the opposite. We are breaking free from the human condition, and we are collaborating together to be able to create a new existence that lives in harmony with nature and ourselves. And then we get into the purchasing decisions change.
Mm-hmm.
On the expansive path, it's all about voting with our dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And when we vote with our dollars collectively, that's when we can change markets.
So the power of the consumer.
It's returning the power back to the consumer when we act collectively.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. If we all agreed, if we could all connect the entire world population and say, if we will all, or the people that buy spring water, and we all agree to no longer buy bottled water in containers less than 1 gallon.
Mm-hmm.
We could literally, if everyone agreed to it, we could literally wipe out an entire small bottled water industry. Mm-hmm. And we produce as many bottled waters in a single day. Every day of sales of bottled water, you can stack the bottles end to end, and they can wrap around the globe 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much trash is being generated every day. So that is a great example. Let's just stop buying small bottled water. Personally, I haven't bought a bottle of small water in I don't know the last time. So that's my contribution. But unless it's done collectively, it doesn't mean anything. It means something, but it's not going to change the market. So the true power is when consumers collectively act as one.
Yes.
And we can stop feeding the mega corporations. Like if you look over at the constrictive path, mega corporations are controlling our existence. And they've really come to just dominate the world. Well, the reality is these mega corporations feed on our dollars. So if we stop feeding the monster, it'll starve. Mm-hmm. So life on the expansive path is really about supporting a transition back to entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. With these mega corporations really beginning to dominate the world, the entrepreneurism has really suffered. Mm-hmm. At least in the United States, entrepreneurism is what created our country. These big corporations didn't exist.
Yeah.
So changing our purchasing decisions in a collective manner, we then have the power to be able to vote with our dollars, and we can stop feeding the monster and really think globally and buy locally and become very aware of where our food is coming from and where our water is coming from. And whenever possible, source it locally and really get back to investing and be willing to pay more to support family businesses and entrepreneurs because we just don't have the scale that these large corporations do. So yes, I would rather spend more money for a higher quality and just buy less. Mm-hmm. So whatever I need to spend more on, I can just purchase less of. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, I could literally just reallocate some funds and begin to really live within this new paradigm of regenerative living.
So it's the power also of the local communities and the way they also gather to, for example, produce locally, sharing what they produce, be the most autonomous possible. And
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. That is great. So how you build the bridge between the constructive path and the degenerative path?
Yeah, that's a great example. And what I would like to do is just dig into just a little more in terms of what it means to live within each within each paradigm, and then really show people how to take that bridge. So when we're looking at degenerative living in the 20th century, just very, very quickly, it's based on an old paradigm consciousness. It's based on limitation, a very constrictive, narrow perspective. It's a finite existence. There's competition. There's a take and get mindset. So if you want to get something, you just go and take it. There's a degenerative scarcity mindset, and as a result, we're a bit off balanced, and we actually create our own resistance. And it's pretty much everything is energy. That resistance can create some interesting dynamics. We have a need to want to control things and be perhaps a bit forceful in imposing our personal wills to be able to get things that we want. And a lot of people have high anxiety as a result. And most people that live on the constrictive path either live in the past, they're either dwelling on the past, or they're worried about the future, or worse yet, both. And very little time is spent in present time. And that's where magic happens, is in present time. So just overall, pretty much people are asleep. They're considered sleeping souls. And sleeping souls that have a finite perspective, they're considered third-dimensional beings. Not three-dimensional. Three-dimensional is different than third-dimensional. Third dimensions, there are dimensions as far as spirituality. And the third dimension is basically a human that is asleep. So then we compare that to regenerative living in the 21st century. It's like it's living on the expansive path, which is this new paradigm, and there's this expansive, infinite perspective. All of a sudden, we see things through a new set of eyes, and there's an infinite existence. There's collaboration. There's giving and receiving, because we're all here to support one another. So the community is about supporting one another, and we have a giving and receiving exchange. Things happen in balance and flow, and allowing divine will to actually determine the outcome versus us trying to control what happens. And we live present time. We live present time in a state of calmness. And when we live present time in a state of calmness, that is when our creativity is at its maximum. So we actually awaken to our truth in terms of our own power, and at this point we are considered fifth-dimensional beings. So the bridge that you mentioned is going from, and this is humanity's challenge, transitioning from a third-dimensional being to one of a fifth-dimensional being. And that's what we're going to discuss for the rest of our time together today, is how to make that bridge, because there's actually 4 areas where we can quickly review to help people become more powerful. And and then at the end, I want to wrap it up with showing people exactly the things that I do to heal myself.
Great. Let's do it.
All right, great. Thank you. So, so the first thing that I'd like to do is review 4 areas where people can become more powerful. The first one, which we talked about, is awareness. The second one is perspective. The third one is imagination, and the fourth one is intuition.
Wow.
So we talked about awareness, but it's really about becoming self-aware and realizing that we are infinite spiritual beings having a finite human experience. And when people truly believe that, that's when things can change. Like that is a critical aspect to ascending, is the realization that yes, we are spiritual beings. And that's when things can change. So perspective is what I want to talk about next. And perspective, I got a great analogy that I'd like to share with everyone. and it's a classroom analogy. Have you ever been in a classroom where the teacher called you to the board, and there's a problem on the board, and you ought to go up and try and solve the problem, and you have no idea how to solve that problem. You're standing at the board, and all you see, you're just staring at the problem,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel the energy and the snickering and the remarks of your friends that are behind you laughing because they know that you don't know how to solve the problem, and you feel the pressure of the teacher questioning, like, what are you going to do so it's like that whole scenario.
Yeah. Fortunately, I didn't have many times.
No, well, good for you, because I experienced that, and then I stuttered on top of it, so it was like a compounding effect. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember that experience very well, and it was a very uncomfortable experience to be in. And like I said, I had blinders on because all I could see is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what it's like to live on the constricted path.
Mm-hmm.
So now if you take that same person and you move them to the back of the classroom, what I think is amazing is that, first of all, from the back of the classroom, your perspective is so much broader. You can see so much more. You can still see the problem on the board. You can see the students and teacher looking at you. You can look out the window and see the birds and the trees. You can look up and see the ceiling. There's so much more space that I have to be able to see the situation from the back of the classroom versus if I'm just standing at the board. And what I think is most fascinating about this is that I believe that we are the only species that has the ability to view ourselves. Yep. So we can not only view the teacher and the students looking at us, but we can see ourselves standing at the chalkboard trying to figure out the problem. Mm-hmm. But when we have that expansive perspective, there's so much more room for ideas and potential solutions to come about, because I'm not so fixated on I got to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we just allow things to happen. The answer will appear.
Mm-hmm.
But when it appears is really when we have that more expansive view to allow that space for new ideas and solutions to come about.
Be the observer of the movie.
Yes, exactly. You're right on it. So, so the next thing that I would like to talk about is acceptance. Well, I'm sorry, is imagination.
Imagination, yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it was like over in Europe, but I can tell you, growing up in the U.S., I was taught not to use my imagination. I was taught to think my way through things, and that was challenging because I'm a very creative person, yet I wasn't able to really explore that side of myself because it was about solving the problem by thinking our way, or determining the right thing to do by thinking our way through something. Mm-hmm. And now, through my seeking, I mentioned at age 45, I kind of went on an inward exploration, and now I obviously still think, but I really use my ability to feel so much more for not only my imagination. I now use. I'm very analytical, yet at the same time I'm very creative. So I believe I'm like a whole brain thinker. I've taught myself to really use both sides of my brains, and even when I'm left-handed, but I do things right-handed. So I will, like, for example, a hammer. I will intentionally use a hammer the opposite way. So I'm very aware, and I practice doing things both ways. I'm also into skateboarding, so I've taught myself to be able to skateboard either way with either foot forward, and it's a completely different experience when you switch it up, when you start doing it.
That's nice. I brush my teeth with my left hand.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yes, yeah, interesting. So I just want to encourage people to really begin to tap into our imagination. And our imagination, we can really tap in at the most when we are calm and we are present time. And that's when the feminine energy comes and emerges and blossom and create beauty and flow. It happens in a state of calmness. It does not happen in a state when we're kind of freaking out. So, and it's on the constrictive path. I mean, there's a lot of anxiety that's happening. So creativity and imagination just kind of gets squashed. So moving on to
intuition.
Yeah, that was another thing. I was taught to think and not feel, and that, particularly being a male in the U.S., we were discouraged from feeling pretty much anything, and like we were taught that you don't cry. Like crying is like it's for sissies. But what I've learned is that actually crying is very, very healthy, and it's a way for us to release energy blocks that we have within our aura, and so it's actually very healthy. So again, that's like another old paradigm is crying is for sissies. New paradigm is crying is very healthy for you, and everyone should really cry. Because it's a way, it's a physical way for us to be able to release. So
yeah, there is
yes,
to heal ourselves, the part.
Yes, yeah, we're going to go on to that now, where basically we've reviewed 4 different ways to become more powerful, which is, first of all, to expand our self-awareness, to realize that we are our authentic selves, are spiritual beings having a human experience. Then expanding our perspective from finite to infinite and being open to all possibilities. Beginning to use our imagination more and tapping into that creative feminine energy. And then the 4th way, as we already reviewed, is to really trust and flow our intuition and live heart-centered lives. And then the 5th way, which is what we're getting into now, is learning how to heal ourselves. And I think a great place for people to begin healing themselves is through forgiveness. Forgiveness is truly our pathway to freedom, because forgiveness, it's not only about forgiving ourselves, but it's about forgiving others as well. Because in the new paradigm, we believe that we're all teachers for one another. So we're all students and teachers, and we're all here learning from one another. And that was big for me, because I mentioned that I went through a very dark divorce, and for years I was carrying a lot of anger towards my former wife, and I was totally in this victim mentality. And she was the perpetrator. And chances are, if you spoke with her, she was the victim and I was the perpetrator. So, but the reality is, I was holding on to that energy, that bitterness, that anger. It was literally stuck in my body because I was keeping it there myself. And that's what I talk about, self-imposed suffering, is when we hold on to things that we know are not good for us, yet we hold on to them out of our pride or out of our ego or just whatever. But whatever reason, we don't want to let go of it. And when I change my perspective, so here we are about changing perspective, when I realized that I am not a victim of circumstances and I'm a student of life, that's when my perspective of life changed. Because it's like, wait a minute, we don't just live in this one little finite life, and we don't. I started to realize things about myself that it's very limiting. And what was fascinating, when I changed my perspective to one of a student, I realized that my former wife has been my greatest teacher. She triggered me like nobody else could trigger me in this world. And when I saw her as my greatest teacher, I just broke down and started crying. And I realized just that we've just been through so much together, and it wasn't all bad. I mean, we obviously had some great times too, but we went through a very, very challenging time, and I was able to get to a place of compassion to where I could finally see things from her perspective and not just my own. And that's like another, when you really broaden your perspective, you're able to put yourselves in other people's shoes to see the same thing, but from their perspective. And I can assure you, it looked vastly different than the perspective that I was looking through.
Wow.
So during that transitional period where I went from her being a perpetrator to my greatest teacher, that was the door opening where I was able to discover forgiveness. So
Wow.
forgiveness is really, and what's so interesting, I went into meditation and I asked to connect with her soul. And through that exchange, I'd never spoke to her, like physically. We didn't speak. This is something I just do on my own. And I asked permission to connect, and she accepted. And then I apologized to her. I apologized and took responsibility for my part, and I forgave her for her part. And what was fascinating is that the next time we spoke, we got along so much better. There was like a lightness in the air that wasn't there the previous time. So the point of it is, you can do the whole forgiveness thing all within yourself. It's not about calling people up, and I mean, you can certainly do that too. And there are instances where that is actually very healthy. But there are times where you can just do it all within, and it still works. And it's really about helping yourself. I mean, sure, it's positive if you're able to help other people too. But at the end of the day, it's really about forgiving yourself and really coming to terms with whatever happened and allowing that energy. I literally felt, when I went through that experience, I felt energy, like just, it was leaving my body. And when I was done, I was just like, I felt great. It was just like I had a massage. It was just like, it was amazing. So I know the power of forgiveness.
Yeah. And the other?
One, acceptance. Acceptance is huge. Acceptance of myself, acceptance of others, acceptance that we all have different perspectives. So I honor other people's perspectives, even if I'm not seeing things the same way. It doesn't matter because our perspectives are different. So I respect and honor and accept other people's perspectives. Accepting what is. I lived at a yoga community for 8 months, and the guru there was really espousing this idea that acceptance is living in a place where you accept what is as is when it is. So it just gets into a mode of just total acceptance. And when we're able to live our lives in calmness, when there's chaos around us, that is one of the most powerful positions to be in.
Yeah, for sure.
And that comes through acceptance.
Yeah, very nice.
Thank you. The next one is self-love.
Yeah.
This is a huge one because, again, in the United States, we were taught that self-love is selfish, that it's being a narcissist, and you're supposed to love other people first before you love yourselves. Otherwise, you're being selfish. And I've just come to learn that this, for me in my life, the way that I'm living it now, that the opposite is absolutely true. That all of that is just illusion. The truth is that self-love is one's love of oneself, and it's very healthy. Like it's very healthy, and that's where love originates. So I cannot love another, truly love another, until I truly love myself. And if I'm trying to fill that missing void of love in myself by seeking it through somebody else, that's the making of a dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah, it's a codependent relationship. And it's not selfish. You love yourself first. It's only when you are whole that you can love others, truly.
Yeah, exactly. Amen to that. So that's self-love. And then the fourth area are beliefs. And I cannot stress this enough, because if we evolve over time, so here I am, I grew up a very finite human being, and now here I am, I'm evolving to, yes, I'm still human, but there's a spiritual aspect to me that I'm growing into my true power. My beliefs changed. And many times when people expand, or they think they're expanding, they're still operating on a belief system that was perhaps even imposed upon them throughout their childhood. Like we are taught to believe certain things growing up, and a lot of it is about conformity. And so what I really suggest that people do is to go in and take an inventory of your beliefs and really understand whether they're accurate in terms of reflecting who you truly are today. Because when people take that inventory of their beliefs, you're able to modify your belief structure and embed that into your subconscious mind so that we begin to naturally operate in a new way.
So now we have just a little short time ahead of us, and we want to just want to say to the public that we want to keep it strict to the time. If somebody wants to leave and the time is a little bit prolonged, please go ahead. I think we are going to enter in a very important part that I was going to ask you, Bo, what really ways that you practice to heal yourself, so that people can learn a little bit about what kind of things that you do and maybe get inspired by them. So if you can share that with us.
Sure, absolutely. I will quickly run through the list, and then it would be nice to open it up for questions, and I can certainly address any healing modality that I mentioned. So the first thing that I do a lot of is spiritual journaling. It's very powerful, where if there's something that's bothering me, I'll just open up my journal and I just start writing. And I don't worry about grammar. I don't worry about how neat it is. It's just a conscious flow of thought. And I'm really just downloading everything that is bothering me about a particular situation, and I'm emptying my brain onto my paper. And I will continue to write about it and continue to write about it until all my thoughts are exhausted. And what's fascinating is that many times there will be thoughts that I didn't consciously have before that came up because I already wrote about everything that I was consciously aware of. So everything you're thinking, you write that first, and then all of a sudden, when you think that you're done writing, new stuff will come in, and that's the stuff that's coming out of your subconscious brain, because consciously you've already written everything else. So it's a very powerful way to really understand what's going on in our lives. And when I'm done journaling, my mind is empty, and I feel so much lighter. So that's very powerful.
Wow. Yeah.
The second thing that I do are full moon and new moon ceremonies. The full moon is a great time to release aspects of ourselves that no longer serve us. And new moon is about bringing in new beginnings. So living my life on the cycles of the moon, I've found to be very helpful. I also draw angel, light keeper, and animal spirit cards. I have 3 different decks, and I draw 1 card every day. And it's amazing how they speak to me. And it's amazing how the cards, even though I'm using different decks, they're all kind of pointing at the same thing. So it's when you get into using them on a daily practice, so insightful. So that's something else that I do. Another thing that I do is called Transformational Breath. I try and do that 1 hour a week. And Transformational Breath is about the most powerful healing modality that I have discovered. And you're looking at someone, I've done ayahuasca multiple times. I've done mushrooms. I've experimented with a lot of medicinal plant medicine. And even so, I have found that doing breath work is equally, if not more powerful. And what's so cool about it is you don't need anything other than your own breath.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'll get into is meditation. I meditate, and I really try and quiet my mind. I'll go sit in the woods and just stare at nature and just have a silent meditation where I just don't think of anything, and I'm just there, fully present. And there's a saying that goes, a cup is at its maximum usefulness when it's empty. I try and empty my cup. The other thing that I do is called Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is a sleeping meditation where you're consciously awake, but your body's asleep. Very powerful. You can go on to YouTube and just type in Yoga Nidra, NIDRA, and very powerful. I also do a lot of walking in bare feet. I mentioned I was at a yoga community, and for 8 months I was in bare feet, and amazing, because we absorb the energy from Mother Earth through our feet, and when we're wearing shoes, it really cuts down on that. So walking barefoot is very very healthy. The other thing I do is I stay hydrated. I drink a lot of water. I drink at least 90 ounces a day, which is half my body weight. The other thing I do 100 push-ups a day, 6 days a week, and then I take a day off. I learned that if a man can do 40 straight push-ups, his likelihood of having a heart attack is like 2%. And if you can't do 40 straight push-ups, then it goes up to like 60-some%. So really about strengthening our chest area. It's very beneficial for our heart to stay strong in our shoulders and our chest.
Very nice.
Then the last thing that I do is I'm prepared. Like I'm prepared for chaos. So what's cool is I live on the expansive path, but I'm still aware of what's going on on the constrictive path. The difference is I don't buy into it. Like I don't energetically feed into the drama. So I am that observer that you're talking about. And through observation, I know something is very important. And that is, based on what's going on in the world right now, it's important for us to be prepared. So I have like 3 months of food just tucked away. I have water tucked away. Because from what I understand, it's in the astrology charts that we're actually in the period right now. Actually, in the chart, it says between September 6th and November 13th, there's going to be another round of hell. So it's important for us to get prepared. So I just want to pass that along, to go out and just stock up on some food and water. So if something does go down, you don't have to rush out. You're already prepared in advance, and you don't have to deal with all the mayhem that's happening at that time. So that's where I am. We did go a couple minutes over, so I apologize for that. But
no, you did a great job. Thank you so much, Bo. It's a very profound and long theme. We just wanted to have a little bit of your insight on it. You were brilliant on it. I just wanted to, if people wanted to go along with some questions, please go ahead in the comment session, please. If not, I just wanted to ask you, as wrapping up, if you wanted to say in the sentence to people right now what advice or what the way that people, some sentence, the last sentence that you can give to people, that would be nice. And also, if you want to share your contact detail, if people wanted to contact somehow and know a little bit more about your work, please go ahead.
Sure. I think the last thing that I'll leave you with is really, I encourage you to become a student of life if you're not already one, because when we live life through being a student and viewing every experience that we create as an opportunity to learn, there's like a new sense of curiosity and like almost like a giddiness that happens where we kind of return to our childlike state, and that's when we were very creative and very just curious about life. So that's what happened to me, is when I transitioned from being a victim to a student, I discovered like a new curiosity of life, and I just realized what little I know and how much more that I'm able to learn while I'm here. If people want to learn more about me specifically, you can certainly go to my website, which is bolockwood.com, B-O, and then LOCKWOOD.com. But what I really would encourage people to do is to go to another website of mine, which is called 21stcenturyparadigm.com. And it really explains, it actually has that Y chart on the front page, and it kind of explains what's going on. But what I really encourage you to do, there's actually a self-awareness assessment that people can take, and it's free. You don't have to put in your email or a credit card or anything. You just go and take it. And it really helps people understand how self-aware they are. And you respond to 44 different statements, whether you agree or disagree. And then at the end, it tallies up your score, and it lets you know essentially where you are as far as your ascension to awakening your soul. So
Yeah.
again, that's 21stcenturyparadigm.com, and I really encourage people to go do that because I really think within a few minutes you'll learn you'll learn something about yourself. So I think that's
Yeah, we can also add in our LinkedIn page that contact of yours. And people, if you're not following our LinkedIn page, please go ahead. It's amarnavida. It's our name. Also can follow us on Facebook, even in Instagram too. We are revamping our website, and so I don't advertise it so much since it's not the last version. But yes, so thank you so much, Bo. It was lovely to have you. Wonderful to talk with you. Amazing person and experience, and what you are doing to all of us in the world. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much to all the audience and the others that engage with us in this session. And we hope that in the next two talks that we have, you can also be there too. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and bless you all.
great. Bless you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you inviting me to be on. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to exit now. Okay. Bye
Yes.
bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not there.